Imagine playing in the NBA, winning a championship, and still being remembered as one of the biggest financial disasters in basketball history. That was the reality for Shandon Anderson, whose time with the New York Knicks became a cautionary tale of mismanagement and shattered expectations. But while his contract became infamous, the man behind the numbers deserves a closer look. Anderson's story isn't just about failure, it's about resilience, adaptation, and ultimately proving his worth when given the right opportunity. Shandon Anderson wasn't supposed to be a star. Drafted in the second round, 54th overall, by the Utah Jazz in 1996, he had everything stacked against him. Second-round picks rarely make lasting impacts in the NBA. Most fade into obscurity after a season or two, but Anderson was different. He worked his way up through sheer determination, becoming a versatile wing player who could defend multiple positions and contribute offensively. His journey from overlooked prospect to rotation player with the Jazz and Houston Rockets showed his character and work ethic. Playing alongside legends like Karl Malone and John Stockton in Utah taught Anderson what it meant to be a professional. He learned how to play winning basketball, how to accept his role, and how to contribute without needing the spotlight. Those early years with the Jazz were foundational. He wasn't getting major minutes, but he was absorbing knowledge from Hall of Famers and championship-level coaches. When he moved to Houston, he got his chance to showcase what he had learned. The Rockets gave him more responsibility, more minutes, and more trust. During his time with the Rockets in the 1999 to 2000 season, Anderson reached his peak. He averaged a career-high 12.3 points per game, playing over 32 minutes a night. He wasn't a superstar, but he was reliable, consistent, and valuable. At 27 years old, entering free agency, Anderson looked like a player entering his prime. The Rockets believed in him enough to offer a 6-year, $42 million contract. That's when things took an unexpected turn. Before you go any further, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Do you think Anderson deserved a second chance after his Knicks struggles? Let us know your thoughts. On August 10, 2001, Anderson's life changed forever. The Houston Rockets signed him to that massive contract, then immediately traded him to the New York Knicks in a complex three-team deal. The Knicks were desperate. They had just lost Patrick Ewing and needed to rebuild. They wanted to shed Glenn Rice's salary and bring in fresh talent. Anderson, along with guard Howard Eisley, became part of that plan. The Knicks believed they were getting a player who could contribute 12 to 15 points per game and provide defensive versatility. On paper, it made sense. In reality, it became a nightmare. But here's the thing. Anderson wasn't to blame for what happened next. The Knicks organization was in chaos. Just as the season started, veteran forward Larry Johnson retired unexpectedly due to injuries. Then, just 19 games into the season, head coach Jeff Van Gundy resigned, citing diminished focus. Van Gundy was the coach who likely wanted Anderson's defensive skill set in his system. Without him, Anderson lost his role. The team spiraled, finishing 30-52 and missing the playoffs for the first time since 1987. Anderson went from playing over 32 minutes a game with Houston to just 19.5 minutes with New York. His scoring dropped from 12.3 points per game to only 5.0. That wasn't because he forgot how to play basketball. It was because he was placed in a dysfunctional, unstable environment where no one could succeed. Think about that for a moment. Anderson was a player who thrived in structured systems like Utah and Houston. He wasn't a create-your-own-shot star. He needed a defined role, good coaching, and teammates who trusted him. The Knicks gave him none of that. Instead, they blamed him for not living up to a contract he didn't negotiate. Houston gave him that deal. The Knicks just inherited the financial burden. Anderson became the scapegoat for organizational failure. The media coverage during this period was brutal. Every game, analysts would point to Anderson's contract and compare it to his production. They calculated cost per point, showing that the Knicks were paying over $1 million for each point he scored in that first season. Sports talk shows made him a punchline. Fans booed him at Madison Square Garden. For a professional athlete who had worked his entire life to reach the NBA, this public humiliation must have been devastating. Yet Anderson never complained publicly. He never demanded a trade or caused locker room problems. He showed up, worked hard, and tried to contribute however he could. What many people forget is that Anderson was still providing value in ways that don't show up in the box score. He was a strong perimeter defender who could guard multiple positions. In an era when isolation scoring was dominant, having a versatile defender was crucial. Anderson's teammates respected his work ethic and professionalism. Young players on those struggling Knicks teams looked to him as an example of how to handle adversity. While the contract made him an easy target, the person wearing the uniform was doing everything right. The Knicks front office, meanwhile, continued making questionable decisions. They signed more expensive veterans to bloated contracts. They traded away draft picks. They cycled through coaches. Anderson's contract was just one piece of a larger puzzle of mismanagement. But because his scoring numbers were so visible and his salary was so public, he bore the brunt of the criticism. It wasn't fair, but it was the reality of playing in New York, the biggest media market in basketball. During those difficult years, Anderson showed remarkable mental toughness. Many players would have crumbled under that pressure. The constant criticism, the boos from home fans, the media making him a symbol of everything wrong with the franchise. It would break most people, but Anderson kept showing up. He kept practicing. He kept trying to help his team win. That kind of character doesn't get celebrated enough in professional sports. We often focus on talent and production, forgetting that showing up with dignity during the worst moments requires its own kind of strength. The financial analysis of Anderson's contract became a case study in sports business programs. Analysts pointed to him as an example of why teams shouldn't overpay for one good season. They talked about the dangers of long-term contracts and the importance of sustainable performance. All of this analysis was valid from a business perspective, but it dehumanized Anderson, turning him into a cautionary tale rather than a person. He became a number, a mistake, a lesson. People forgot there was a human being trying his best in an impossible situation. What made things worse was that Anderson and Isley were acquired together, and both struggled. The combined weight of their contracts, over $10 million that first season, became a symbol of the Knicks' decline. Analysts would say that single trade sent the franchise into a downward spiral. That's a heavy burden for any player to carry. Knowing that your acquisition is blamed for destroying one of basketball's most iconic franchises would weigh on anyone's mind. Yet Anderson persevered. Over the next 2 seasons, Anderson's numbers improved slightly. He averaged 8.4 points in 2002-03 and 7.9 points in 2003-04. His minutes increased as the team stabilized somewhat under coach Don Chaney. The improvement showed that when given consistent opportunities, Anderson could still contribute. He worked on his game, adjusted to new coaching styles, and tried to rebuild his value. But by then, the narrative was set. He was labeled as overpaid and underperforming. The media and fans focused on the contract, not the circumstances. They ignored the fact that Anderson was still a solid defender, a good teammate, and a professional who showed up every day despite being vilified. By 2004, the Knicks had seen enough. Under new president Isaiah Thomas, they told Anderson not to report to training camp. They tried to trade him, but no team wanted to absorb his remaining $24 million over 3 years. So the Knicks did the unthinkable. They paid Anderson between $20 and $22 million just to go away. They bought out his contract, creating dead money that haunted their salary cap for years. This decision wasn't Anderson's fault either. It was the Knicks admitting they made a catastrophic mistake. The buyout itself revealed just how desperate the organization had become. They were willing to sacrifice enormous amounts of cash just for the possibility of future flexibility. The dead money continued to penalize their salary cap long after Anderson left, making it harder to sign quality free agents or make trades. This ripple effect damaged the franchise for years, yet Anderson was the one who carried the stigma. He walked away with his money, yes, but also with a reputation as one of the worst contracts in Knicks history. That label followed him everywhere. Here's where Anderson's story takes a beautiful turn. After being waived by New York, he signed with the Miami Heat. Suddenly, in the right system with the right coaching, Anderson looked like a completely different player. He embraced his role as a veteran presence, a defender, and a glue guy. The Heat had established stars like Shaquille O'Neal and Dwayne Wade who could carry the offensive load. Anderson didn't need to score, he just needed to defend, make the right plays, and contribute to winning basketball. In 2006, Shandon Anderson won an NBA championship with the Heat. Let that sink in. The same player the Knicks paid millions to release became a champion just 2 years later. He proved he was a viable championship-caliber role player. He just needed to be valued correctly. Anderson's championship with Miami validated everything he had worked for. It showed that his struggles in New York weren't about his ability. They were about fit, timing, and organizational dysfunction. The Heat understood what the Knicks never did. Anderson didn't need to be a 15-point scorer. He needed to be a professional who did his job within a winning system. Miami gave him that opportunity, and he delivered when it mattered most. Looking back, Anderson's Knicks tenure teaches us important lessons. First, context matters. You can't judge a player solely by stats without understanding the circumstances. Anderson's production dropped because his role and minutes were slashed in a chaotic environment. Second, organizations bear responsibility for their decisions. The Knicks chose to take on Anderson's contract. They chose to pair him with an unstable roster and coaching staff. Blaming the player for front office mistakes is unfair. Third, redemption is always possible. Anderson could have disappeared after the Knicks debacle. Instead, he reinvented himself and won a championship. Shandon Anderson's career scoring average stands at 7.8 points per game across 596 NBA games. Those numbers don't tell the whole story. They don't capture the second-round pick who defied the odds, the versatile defender who contributed to winning teams, or the champion who proved his doubters wrong. Anderson's legacy shouldn't be defined by a bad contract he didn't negotiate or an organizational collapse he didn't cause. It should be defined by his perseverance, professionalism, and ultimate success. If you've enjoyed learning about Shandon Anderson's journey, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. We're dedicated to telling the full stories of players who deserve better recognition. Drop a comment and let us know which player's story you want us to cover next. Anderson's story reminds us that careers are rarely defined by one chapter, no matter how painful. His championship ring tells the real truth about who he was as a player and a person.